The summer wind came blowing
8:25, this is Piscopo in the Morning. Joe recovering from appendicitis, and while this is a day for Elvis fans to mourn because of the King's passing 40 years ago, and a day for Beatles fans to celebrate because it was the day Pete Best was fired and replaced with Ringo Starr, whether it's Elvis Day or Beatles Day, every day in Steve Adubato's world is Sinatra Day. It gives me great pleasure to say hello to my good friend, PBS anchor and the author of Lessons in Leadership, Steve Adubato. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Frank. Is Alan there with you, too? I've been listening.
Unfortunately, yes.
Good morning, Steve.
Al's looking trimmer than ever. Frank, you guys are holding up the fort till the man gets back. The word from my sources in the medical and healthcare community is Joe is making a huge deal of this, getting all the points he can, but he'll be back as quickly as possible. It's amazing how everyone's talking about him.
Yes, well, that is for sure, and he's doing a great job recovering from this. He's going to be back tomorrow. Steve, I'm sure you have quite a bit to say about yesterday's press conference by the president, and I'm guessing very little of it is positive. Let us have it, Steve. What did you think of the president's remarks yesterday?
Take the politics out. Take the partisanship out. Take the Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals. Take it all out of there. I can't tell you how disappointed I am, Frank. I respect that you and Joe and some of the others have been supportive of President Trump as a candidate as well, and many of my friends have been. But I will tell you, this is not politics. This is about our country. I don't get why he, after he did just the other day, came down and said the right thing about the KKK and the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. He had it right, finally, and I believe something clicked in him where he said, I have to balance. I don't even know what balance is. Sometimes when you're talking about Hitler and Nazis and people who are advocating hate and violence against our country, and by the way, we're Catholic, we're Italian, they hate us. Forget about just blacks and Jews. They hate anyone who doesn't look like them. Why? Why, Mr. President, did you choose to do this when you criticize so many, so quickly about so many things that are not as important as this? I am devastated, disappointed, and fearful for where we go from here, Frank.
Now, I more or less do agree. I think he should. I agree with Michael Goodwin's column in the New York Post today.
I read it today.
Yeah, his comments on Monday were sufficient. He should have let it at that point. I don't see why he needed to revisit this again. And I agree with what you said, but. Don't you think the president did clearly condemn bigotry and violence both on Monday and then again yesterday when he reiterated that? And yet, even if he did say something stupid, which is that there were many fine people,
right,
as part of the white nationalist march, don't you think that the Trump critics are not necessarily giving the devil his due when it comes to giving him credit for renouncing violence and bigotry?
Frank, here's the thing. When Black Lives Matter, when some of those protesters yelled, what do we want, a dead cop, what do we want it now? Together with millions of others, I condemned it as racist, as anti-cop, as dangerous, as hateful, as un-American. Here's the thing the president doesn't seem to get. You don't need to talk about other people, the other protesters, to somehow, quote, balance things out. When something is what it is, it's clear as day. And Republicans, conservatives, I saw my friends on Fox News blasting the president. So when people say this is Democrats attacking in the media, the president gave it to Frank. The president handed over to his critics and to those who even want to be supportive of him. Frank, he handed them an excuse to question his leadership, his integrity, his morality. And the fact is, I don't know what it's in his heart, but words matter greatly in times of crisis. And in my book, Lessons in Leadership, I'll say then and I'll say again, I've always been concerned about President Trump, or potentially then he's a candidate, Donald Trump's emotional maturity to measure his words. And Frank, he may have been technically right about those others who were protesting. It wasn't the right time to say it.
Well,
it just wasn't.
When you say the others who were protesting, you meaning the ones that were throwing urine-filled balloons and agitating the white nationalists, the counter-protesters?
Frank, you're not going to get a debate from me that there were not many on the other side of this who were doing what you just said. But here's the problem. You have people who are Nazis, who hate this country in so many ways, who want to, quote, take back their country. And you had others who went there, some of whom, many innocent people, who went there to protest it because it's the right thing to do. Others were there to agitate. But here's the problem. The president when the president said he didn't know who David Duke was, originally, but then there's a quote from him with Tim Russert in an interview in Meet the Press in 2000 where he said, "I abhor everything David Duke is." Here's the point I'm making. The president equivocates. The president plays games with these white supremacists, KKK, neo-Nazis, because some of them, and those who sympathize with them, in my view, are part of that 32% base. And you want to know something? Trump would be better off as a president, as a politician, as a leader, if he abandoned them and appealed to those of us who might be supportive of him and others who are even more inclined to be supportive of him who have run away from him. Frank, this is dangerous. This is not politics. And I know in your heart you don't believe that the president did the right thing yesterday.
Well, I thought the vast majority of his press conference was fine. I thought the part where he said that they're very fine people, that some
Why
of
did he do that?
I thought that was just from forgetting about being morally wrong and just factually wrong. I thought it was from a political strategic point of view idiotic because it's such a distraction from everything else that the president wants to do.
Frank, here's my concern. Why is the president even thinking about trying to put white supremacists, KKK, neo-Nazis, and their horrible things they say and do? These are people who lynched blacks. These are people who want to go back to the days when Hitler was in charge in Germany and exterminated the Jews. Why would he need to talk and equivocate and say, the media is not being fair to them, and by the way, they had a permit? Why is that relevant in this case? He focuses on the wrong things at the wrong time, with devastating effect.
Steve, I want to ask you about the New Jersey governor's race as well, but you got to tell me, the president has had some really key successes. I think,
agree.
In terms of infrastructure, the program he's talking about putting forward and trying to galvanize Democratic support for jobs is big.
Stock market and someone who's got a few bucks in the stock market.
And the fact that Kim Jong-un has essentially backed off, of his threat to attack Guam. And that's one of the things as a Trump supporter that's so frustrating is that when he says stuff like what he said yesterday, all that gets lost in the sauce. But you would acknowledge that the president, he's doing some good things.
Frank, that's what makes this so dangerous, is that while he, in some areas, gets on track, and in some areas gathers good business people like Ken Frazier, who happens to be African-American, but more importantly in this case is the CEO of Merck, those CEOs and others who are working with him to build our economy, which is why you and so many others and Joe supported him, they abandon him because they can't be with him when he does these things. So he distracts and detracts from the things that he's doing that may have value in this country. And for people like me, who are rooting for him but we're skeptical, it says, you see? And by the way, I can't stand when people bring up Hillary because she was a terrible candidate.
Well, who brought up Hillary?
Leader.
Who brought up Hillary?
I'm not talking about you. On social media and in other places, people say, look at Obama, look at Hillary Clinton. Let's just focus on the person who won. And Donald Trump doesn't need to keep reminding us that he won. He needs to lead and not brag. Lead and not boast.
So the other thing that's frustrating that the Trump critics are engaging in is that there were 39 shootings in Chicago this past weekend, 9 people killed, 9 people murdered, and yet if you look at where the focus of the national media is and the professional anti-Trump resistance, they're focused on taking down a Robert E. Lee plaque in Brooklyn today, in taking down a statue in North Carolina to an unnamed Confederate soldier, of taking down another Confederate statue in Florida yesterday. What's a bigger issue? The fact that people are being murdered in Chicago, the fact that wages, even while unemployment is down, wages are essentially stagnant, or the fact that we're trying to go back and take down 100-year-old statues?
Frank, here's the problem with your argument. I agree with you. The problem is those crimes, those murders in Chicago, the economy, the struggling people who are struggling to find work. The problem is this. News, media, we focus not on dog bites man, the normal, the average, the everyday. Even if it's very important and relevant, we focus on the dog biting the man. The point is this. It's the exceptional, the extraordinary. It's the visual. It's the KKK where we thought really wasn't what they are in this country, reemerging, and that fight that takes place and the horrific thing with the car. It's not normal to see a car mow people over. So the media, me included, focuses very often not on what is most important and impactful on people's lives, but on what is exceptional and extraordinary and visually interesting and provocative. That's quote-unquote news, unfortunately.
Talk to me about the New Jersey governor's race. And if people are just tuning in, we're talking with Steve Adubato. You can see him regularly on PBS. He is on Twitter at Steve Adubato, and he's ubiquitous. He's a columnist. He's a motivational speaker. You name it. And
by the way, Frank, don't make me even bring up the recent Emmy nomination.
I was saving that.
I'm not going to bring it up.
I was saving that, Steve. I've been instructed by your many handlers. People have to see what it's like to get an interview with Steve Adubato. I have to go through 3 or 4 layers of bureaucracy. Your publicist, then your manager, then your agent, then your assistant. And all of them, the one thing they all made me promise was to make sure to mention that you are nominated for an Emmy. I mean, you're the all but certain winner of this Emmy. So we want to congratulate you certainly for that Emmy nomination. But give me your take on the governor's race. At this point, it looks like it's sort of a runaway for Phil Murphy. Do you see any drama at all?
Well, what's interesting is Ambassador Phil Murphy, former ambassador to Germany, Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno, the Republican candidate. The Democrat has the advantage because after 8 years of Republican governor in New Jersey, things tend to shift back to what is so-called normal in New Jersey, which is likely a Democratic candidate. Phil Murphy's got a ton of money. He spent $20 million in the primary, so he has big name recognition. Kim Guadagno has a challenge. I happen to like Kim Guadagno, and I like Murphy. I think they're both good people. The challenge for Kim Guadagno is how can she establish herself as an independent, viable candidate on her own, but also she's trying to figure out how she talks about the Christie administration. Many of the things the governor did were very good, clearly, but there was controversy. She can't figure that out, and many Republicans are not that supportive of her. And here's the self-fulfilling prophecy. If the Republican national governors or the Republican National Committee and others don't provide money for Kim Guadagno, they go, look, Phil Murphy's got all the money. She has no money. He's clearly in the lead. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's harder to raise money. He gets out there more. She doesn't. I think that he's the odds-on favorite to be the next governor in the great and struggling state of New Jersey.
Struggling indeed. Struggling a little less when they get to watch the Emmy-nominated Steve Adubato on PBS. Thank you, Steve.
Please don't mention that. It embarrasses me.
Yeah, I apologize. I won't mention again that you're nominated for an Emmy. Thank you, Steve.
Most importantly, best to our friend Joe and a speedy recovery.
Absolutely.